Hey everybody, I want to welcome you to Fast Track Coaching. This is episode 180 something or other, and I am, my name is Dane Sanders, and I'm up here in Truckee, California, near Lake Tahoe, and really pleased to be here, and I'm really pleased to be on vacation. I have been traveling around quite a bit lately, and to have the privilege of both being with my family and taking a break and pulling out my camera for fun is fantastic, and it also because of the way the summer schedule worked, it became a convenient time actually to reach out to my friend Chris Orwig and have him on today's show, and you guys are stoked. If you don't know Chris, he is an instructor at Brooks Institute, one of the most prestigious photo schools in the world, in Santa Barbara, California, which is where I lived for about 6 years. Chris and I are relatively new friends, and we met through a number of common connections, most notably from Julieanne Kost, who encouraged me at the beginning, but also some other common friends, and he teaches for Linda, and he's just a fine photographer, a great portrait artist, and I couldn't be more pleased to have Chris on. So welcome to the show, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. Excited to be here. I wish I was in Lake Tahoe, though. Looks amazing out there.
Yeah, well, it is pretty nice, but given the pictures behind you, I'm making up that you're no stranger to beautiful places. So.
Yes, exactly. I enjoy beautiful places. So Tahoe is a fun place for me. I grew up as a kid going there, and I just love it. Tahoe in the summertime, amazing.
It is. It is. It's funny. I'm on the heels of once a year I try to give myself a treat and go take a workshop from a colleague who I have esteem for, and I was just out in Philadelphia. I gave a workshop, but then I went to a workshop as a student with my friend Cliff Motner, who's this fantastic wedding photographer. He was a journalist for, did like 6,000 jobs for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and then he has shot like 850 weddings. And he's a little salty East Coast, but just I came away so inspired, and to leave that context and to be here with my gear and my family. I don't know if it gets much better, but you know,
Yeah.
those moments when
Great.
kind of things align, and it's not a bad thing that we're a photographer. Do you ever have that experience?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. I can relate to that. I love the idea of that you took a workshop. I've been wanting to take one, and I've been starting to kind of prowl through the different things that are out there. I haven't selected one yet, but I'm just dying to be a student. That's a trick with being a teacher, is that a lot of times you can give these assignments, but you don't do them yourself. And so you end up just looking at other people's photography or critiquing it. But so the challenge, of course, is to always like step back into that student role. And so recently I've been doing these assignments for my classes, and I did one
You mean like
last week.
you're actually doing the assignment that you're assigning?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I'm supposed to be like the guy who kind of has it together, but I did this one assignment, and mine was one of the worst photos in the whole class. And that was good. You know, it was good to just revisit it. That's, you know, I love that about photography. We've talked about that before, but it's process, you know, and you're constantly learning. So.
Well, it's really fun you're saying that, Chris, because and by the way, if you're watching the show and you've never been to Fast Track Coaching before, this is what we do. We hang out, we talk for about a half hour about creativity and business, and if you have questions and you're in the chat, you should be asking them right now. Just type them in all caps, and we're like, by the way, my reflector, which is doing a poor job, is a piece of what is this, aluminum foil hung up on my screen, and it just, one of them flew away. So anyways, if you're at home and you're watching this, you have questions for Chris or me or anybody, just engage it. Don't waste any time. And when this plays live for the first time, we'll be on the chat, hopefully. And just go ahead and do that and reach out. But as you say that, Chris, I was immediately brought back to two things. One, last year I had the privilege of taking a workshop from another colleague of mine, a guy I really appreciation for, a guy named Ghionis. And one of the first things we did was portfolio review. And I said to Jerry going in, like, I really want to be a student. And I walked into the context of the class where it just so happened that a handful of people in the class had read my book or something. And I had a decision to make in that moment of, like, what was I going to be? You know, which role was I going to take on? And I'm really glad that I in that moment chose I'm going to be a student, and then Jerry proceeded to say, "Okay, then," and he ripped me a new one on portfolio review, and it was such a great moment because it's like a flattening moment where we all just got to be photographers without pretense,
Right.
And it was funny going into Cliff's workshop this past week. A little kind of moment going in, but this time I was even. Jerry's very gentle, and Cliff has this edge to him, and I remember going in like, I wonder where I'm at. Was kind of the feeling I had of because I have such esteem for him and his work, and as we got to the end of the time where we did portfolio on the back end, it was really it was helpful to both get criticized and affirmed, and Cliff was very kind and some cool things, and I actually connected the dots on a couple pieces that I had never really thought well of before. When you think about your own experience, just as a photographer, not just as a teacher, talk a little bit about that tension of both needing criticism to improve, but also as an artist to need to be recognized or seen, or what is that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, kind of maybe going back to the classroom for starters, and I'll loop around to some other things, but critique's an interesting just whole thing, and I think there's kind of an art to getting critique and then also trying to seek it out, right? Whole mentorship, apprenticeship, and getting those feedback and all that. But anyway, maybe about a decade ago or so, I was at a dinner with Linda Weinman, who founded lynda.com, and she started out as a teacher. She's an amazing teacher, kind of my role model as a teacher, it really is. And I asked her about critique, and I told her I was struggling with it, and I asked her how she did it. And I said, well, how would you critique this little cocktail napkin, like horrible design, in this restaurant? And basically, what she did is she found some things that she thought worked, and then she said rather than kind of tearing it down or tearing it apart, she said, and I would like to see these other things. And I think you and I have talked about kind of similar, where it's this whole idea of there's critique that says, you shouldn't have done that, or this was wrong, or this was bad. Or you could say the same thing, I like this, or it didn't quite work, and I would like you to see trying it this way. And so anyway, for me, it's finding those people who can give you that kind of, it's a long way to say, but that kind of constructive feedback. Mm-hmm. Because especially in photography, or almost in anything, you can critique things to death. Sure. It's almost like the person that cuts the tree down to count the rings to find out how old it was. And it's like, you lose it. And so for me, that's been really important to seek out specific people who, like you said, know that they'll challenge you. They won't just pat you on the back and say you're great. Love the kayak going by the way. Yeah. That was cool, and I'm glad you planned that in the background.
And cue the kayak. And cue the wind. And sorry.
Oh, God.
Joe, we'll take
so it's because I mean, we've all had those experiences where you have those, some people just aren't good at giving critique. Yeah. And it's kind of, I think it's valuable as an artist to realize it's okay to dodge those people. And then to find the people who are, the point is to get better. And so anyway, that's been an interesting thing to navigate. Because the trick too is once you gain some success, you always have people kind of patting you on the back, but that does nothing for you. The first few pats are nice, but then after that, it's almost because as artists we're looking forward, not necessarily. We don't say like, oh, 5 years ago I got this one image.
Right, right.
So, can you relate to that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think so much of what you're describing, it gives such powerful language to even just my experience of the context from which commentary is coming. So what I heard in what you said was, the language. If I am the person who's giving critique, how powerful it could be to choose language that isn't just defined, like as if I know what right or wrong or good or bad is, but more, right. I'd be curious to see what this would look like if you tried this instead of what you did. Like, that is such an invitation to go do something new, as opposed to treating the image like it's static. Like, like, or even the artist is a static person. Like you're either good or bad or right or wrong. And that, again, I'd love to get criticized by you or critiqued every day of the week because it's the language that's so powerful. And the other thing I heard you say was the context of who's criticizing you. Like, for example, Cliff Montner, I was a little on edge because I assumed that he doesn't blow smoke. Like, and he has such context for shooting in this genre and the way that he shoots and how he approaches it. And he watched me for the better part of a week he said to me, he goes, "I'm so glad you came in as a student." And I could tell you were connecting some dots. And I was.
Hey, let me cut in real quick. I think your reflector's making extra noise there.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Just so people can hear what you're saying. Anyway.
No, I appreciate that. And I think I'm getting excited and I'm playing with So I don't know what got missed in that, but I guess the two things are, one, the language that you choose, and then also how that can be an invitation rather than a kind of a static closed comment. Right. And then the other is how, if Cliff says something and someone else... I'm going to get rid of this. If someone else says those exact same words, because of who says it, it carries a different kind of weight to it.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, when you think of the whole idea of mentoring or people you look up to, of course there's the classics, the people that we all have esteem for, but you have an opportunity as an instructor at Brooks to have some amazing colleagues, like, down the hall. Is there a sense of collegiality and care around pushing the craft, not just, working?
Yeah. I mean, I think, the trick with teaching, and part of the reason why I enjoy it so much is that I feel like I'm mentored or I learn from my students a lot. And I don't just say that. I mean, colleagues, definitely. I have some colleagues who are constantly pushing or thinking, or who just do different things. Like I was in the hall yesterday, and one of my colleagues does a lot of skydiving photography. I was like, how many times have you jumped out of an airplane? It's about 2,500 times.
Oh my.
And so I just sat and talked with him about that. I've never done that, but it just made me think, yeah, that's interesting. Or another guy who's, does all this underwater stuff, or I'm looking at one photo on my wall of a colleague. It's this one out in White Sands, New Mexico, just sand dunes landscape, And so part of that for me is being around people who shoot different things and then learning from them. And you learn a lot from, say, like one friend of mine, Ralph Clevenger, amazing photographer. I went on a weekend trip with him and we were shooting some wildlife. And what was so funny is we show up to this beautiful, along the coast, Big Sur, just epic. And I basically, moving all around, walking everywhere, shooting everything. Ralph just sets up in one spot and is totally patient and just sits there, or stands there and just waits and waits and shoots. And I'm kind of like, man, he's missing out, And then at the end of the day, we reviewed our photos, and of course, mine are just, all over the map. And I can't even explain it. They were so good. And so, spending time with people like that, where he's not necessarily saying, Chris, I'm going to teach you to be patient, but you pick that up and you're like, there's time to move, and I love movement, but there's also time to really listen and settle into it. So anyway, things like, and students too, because the students do these crazy things. Like, either I was this one student in the MFA program, their assignment for this week, and I don't teach in that program, so I was just talking with them, what are you doing? And their assignment was 3 a.m. And so, and that was it. And so the metadata had to say something between 3 and 4 a.m. And I just love that idea.
Yeah.
So you're learning these things from so many different angles. So anyway, yeah, for me, that's pretty exciting. And that's part of it, I think, for all of us, just hanging out with other photographers is immensely valuable. There's no way around it.
Well, I know that, switching gears a little bit, I know that folks who are familiar with your work, and again, if you haven't seen Chris teach, first of all, if you get a chance to go to Brooks, you should. Second, if that's not accessible, you should sign up for lynda.com, lynda.com, and one of the very first courses I did on Lynda, I'm a subscriber, was your course on portraiture, and I literally watched every single 2 to 5 minute vignette all the way through, and it was really, I found myself listening, whether that's my nephew, forgive him.
Cool.
I found myself just really both jealous of the subjects you get to shoot. It just sounds fun to be able to hang out with, Kelly Slater, like these amazing adventure athletes, and the work you get to do because of your genre of choice is cool. But the way in which you approach your work is really, really compelling. It's almost poetic. It seems like you're thinking about your work distinct from doing your work. And the two things I want to address in the time we have left, one is I know folks who are listening will want to hear a little bit of, do you have any fun stories or connections to the subjects you get to shoot? Because I think people are familiar with work. We'll come back to that. But before we get to that, I'd love it if you could talk a little bit about what your thought process is going into a photo shoot. It seems like whether it's a subject like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but because you are methodical in your approach, and I think it's fair to say that, what do you think about as you're approaching an unfamiliar subject and you want to create something artistic?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'll forget the person who said it, but he said something like the most important, I'll say it in my own words, but it's just I think about how can I connect with the person, and that's more important than the picture, because especially with a character who's a fascinating person, you can easily kind of fall into this idea of kind of getting the trophy or something, or but that's not it, and that while other people will see your pictures, that person or the people you work with will remember you more than the picture. For example, you photograph someone great, they don't really need another photograph of themselves.
They have a few already.
But they could use a person who isn't always, especially with a celebrated character, people are always asking something from them. There's a lot of drain on those people. So it's like, well, how can I contribute? And how can I connect? And so for me, I do the journal thing, and I will create these kind of visual maps where...
the journal thing? Tease that out for a second. What is that?
Yeah. So open up a journal, create a page. Actually, let me see if this one... Sorry for this awkward reach. Let me see if I have one right here. This isn't very planned, but let's okay, yeah, this one will work. This was, I was photographing a friend who's a photographer, and I don't know if we're going to be able to see this. Let me see. Yeah. But I put his name in the center, Jeff Lipsky, amazing photographer, great friend, mentor. Yeah. And then I started just throwing words down. Personal, soul, zeal, acoustic, warm, depth, alive, thoughtful, intriguing, contagious, and whatever. And each person has a different little visual map in my mind. And it's more just how do I perceive that person? Because I know there's a lot of debate, like you should go in without any expectations or you should go in completely planned. I like to at least kind of think about them, because what happens, especially with a dynamic character, say like Kelly Slater, when you're in the presence of someone who's won 12, world championships, and he's kind of he's a famous guy. They're famous for a reason. They're charismatic, and or maybe someone really beautiful or really handsome or really tall or just whatever it is, you can easily kind of be taken back. And so I find, I think I'm more of an introvert than extrovert. I kind of like turn in and like, well, who is this person? How do I want to kind of capture them? And that's really important. And then the next part of that is gear. And
that sounds like a funny transition, but I like where you're going. Keep talking.
Yeah. The quote, I think it's Brooks Jensen who said the most important, piece of gear in your bag is compassion. And so, that's kind of what starts. And then I say, well, wow. I'm like a lot of photographers. I have too much gear because you buy a lens every couple of years, and then eventually you have a few, and it's about limiting that selection, knowing that if I bring too much gear, I can't connect, right? And then also trying to find. The thing I think with lenses and with light is that not everyone looks good in certain types of light, and so, or with certain types of lenses. Some people do, and then the longer lenses mean you're further away, but they're more kind of a loud, dramatic, exciting voice. The shorter, normal focal length are more close and honest, at least for my thing. So I kind of like, well, how do I want to do this? So that's my first thought process, and for me, I won't create something that's honest and real, even though the camera, gets in the way of that, right? And so how do I kind of minimize that in order to capture it? And obviously, it's like I want to bring something. I don't want to just journalistically just be like, well, they walk by, snap. I want to create like some kind of depth or connection.
Yeah. By the way, all of a sudden, and if it's too loud, please let me know, but all of a sudden the waves have kicked up here in the lake and windy, so please forgive me if it's too loud.
Time to go sailing.
Well, it might be. We're actually going up. We're going to the top of Squaw today. We're gonna take the gondola up and have some fun with the kiddos. But one of the things I love about what you're describing, even that kind of mind map around the person, I was drawn to. I remember I watched that documentary on Annie Leibovitz about kind of some of her kind of at work in her process, and one of her little offhand comments she makes to the interviewer is like in a very stern kind of way, like I would never walk into a scene without having prepared for the scene. And I get that there's the folks who are committed to a purist journalistic approach, they might have a different take, but that's kind of what I'm hearing you say is to show. And what now if it's Annie or you, and you're going in and you're photographing these well-known folks. What I was struck by as you were chatting was, man, those same principles could be applied with some very unknown people who it's your responsibility to know. So if I'm doing a portrait consultation or a wedding consultation, why not, instead of just getting the data points, create a mind map around what is showing up for me as I encounter them? Does that resonate?
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, and I do it with most people. If I photograph a family or a wedding or editorial or commercial, I mean, the whole thing, I do that. And part of it for me is just a way to kind of get thinking. One of my favorite books in this little bookcase back here is this one called Leo the Late Bloomer. This is this kid's book. And
what's it called? I'm a late bloomer, so what does that mean?
Leo the Late Bloomer. It's a story about this tiger who just wouldn't bloom, and his dad was all worried, and he couldn't write, he couldn't talk. And anyway, my parents gave it to me as a kid, and I didn't realize why until as an adult, because I was a late bloomer.
Interesting.
And but I hang on to this book, especially in photography, because when you do this kind of map, whatever the person is, sometimes it helps me realize, like, because there's a whole rhythm to a shoot, whatever you're shooting. If it's like 10 seconds or 10 minutes or an hour, that really you're looking for that moment when you can catch something. So this may be really bad. This will be a bad analogy, but I'll try it on. Let's say, let's say like a dinner party. Okay. Have friends over. We like going to the harbor. We get crabs and French bread and wine and salad, and all those elements are so good because we've cleaned the house, we've lit the candles, the food's all cooked, we're in the backyard, the sun's setting, and then finally we, do a cheers, and then the hangout time begins. And so that it's a little bit like the shoot, right? And then, but some people take longer. They're kind of the late bloomer, and so by thinking about them, it helps me get in tune with that rhythm. Other people, they're going to give me 5 minutes or 2 minutes, and I have to look for a little teeny crack. I love this quote. I've used it other places, but Leonard Cohen, there are cracks in everything. That's how the light gets in. And it's like looking for these little cracks. And so, yeah, for me, it's all sorts of types of photography. Even going back to Ralph Clevenger shooting wildlife in Big Sur, even wildlife. What is it about this critter or creature or location or, what is a redwood tree? Redwood trees are hard to photograph. Why? What is it about their height, their bark, the light? Anyway. So, yeah.
Man, well, it's so funny.
A lot of things.
I know that I'm speaking for folks who are at home watching this. You're a very thoughtful guy, and you might cut yourself and go, whatever. We're all like, no, say more, because there really is a human resonance to what you're describing, especially if you consider the fact that every frame you take is in fractions of a second. Right. Even if you have a lot of context or a little context, it seems like the photographers who have an understanding of the perspective they're taking.
Right.
And whether they fail or not, are intentionally moving in the direction of,
Right.
of having something work. On some level, it comes full circle to your conversation around critique. Like, how can I critique myself in a way where I wonder what it would look like if I took a little bit more context. I wonder what it would look like if I took a little less. I wonder how can I extend in my own creative process. That just really struck me. And the other thing that really hit home was you quoted Leonard Cohen. Are you kidding me? I grew up in Canada, and Leonard Cohen is like a poet. If you don't know, you guys all know Leonard Cohen, whether you know his name or not, because he's written so many songs that other people have sung successfully. And he's one of those guys that's plagued with not the best voice in the world, but it's kind of like a Canadian Bob Dylan. But I think that's about the most fantastic quote I've heard in a long time. So that's how do you know? You've listened to him over the years? Or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just through that whole thing, and I think bringing up critique's interesting too, because this happens, I'm sure, to all of us in different ways. Someone will send you a link and say, "Hey, tell me what you think."
Just 1 second. My nieces are something's going to go in the water. Just a second.
Okay.
Hey, girls, something just went in the water. Something went in the water. Someone's clothes went in the water. Maybe go to the other pier. It might go over.
Now it's just the this whole idea of I should wait for it to come back, but with like, well, what's the intent of the photograph?
Thanks,
or
Mom.
is it fine art? Is it paint something on your wall? Is it commercial? Or is it to impress, to inspire? And so it's that whole dialogue thing. So I was just saying how with the critique, while you're stepping out, was it's just a dialogue, and that I think photography is more dialogue than we realize, whether we're shooting or not. Maybe going to John Sexton, great black and white photographer, he worked with Ansel Adams for years. One of my favorite quotes from him is, I listen to the trees, and it's this listening. Or, people say, hey, will you look at my photos, tell me what you think. I'm always like, well, what's the point of the photos, or what's your hope? Or is it fine art? Is it a book? Is it and the dialogue is so important, whether you're capturing or reviewing or critiquing, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, please forgive me for jumping up like that. I apologize.
That's great. I love it. So it's the real deal. I feel like I should jump up.
Well, honestly, Chris, I wish you and your family were up here with us. It's
I know. Oh.
One of those magical little moments, and they don't come very often. So when they do come, it's fun to celebrate them. And I know for folks who are at home listening in, it's an absolute treat to hear your perspective and invitation. And I like what you're saying about treating critique as a dialogue or as a conversation. Not even critique, treating what we do as a conversation. And it's a refreshing perspective, especially with so much emphasis on commerce and how are people going to make it at this thing professionally. To pause once in a while and be human with what we're doing. It's just a very life-giving. It's like a trip to Tahoe. It's a very life-giving perspective that I know folks at home are, if they're letting themselves, they're taking a deep breath and going, oh yeah, that's why I got into this whole thing in the first place.
Same deep breath. I pick up on that real quick. It reminded me of a critique of one student's work, and photos were great technically and everything. They were just laughing at something, and part of the dialogue I said, and I asked him this question because I knew it from my experience. I said, did you breathe very much during that photo shoot? He's like, oh, I was so nervous. I was holding my breath the whole time. And I was like, yeah, you can see it in your pictures. And because people reflect how what we do, if we kind of your breath or stretch your shoulders out or set our camera down or something, they'll kind of respond. And that, I think even, it is the deep breath is important. Whether we're reviewing our own work, because part of that means like, okay, let me try to not be so self-critical of my own work for a second and just like the photo versus, but especially with digital capture, we go immediately to the problem. highlights off, something's wrong, or, in the tree above your head I can see chromatic aberration, and I keep thinking, I could fix that,
Right.
But rather than saying, okay, I'm going to fix it, how can I explore this or enjoy this, and take that deep breath? And even when I'm shooting people too, which may mean I miss the shot. For me, conversation is really important when I'm shooting. And if I miss the shot, which I really, 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 really want, that's okay. Because it's about connection. And many times, the shot that I think I want probably wouldn't have been that good, but because I kind of let go of it, the one that I might have been given was better, right? So that's part of it, kind of, for me as well.
It's funny, some of you guys at home don't know this, but Chris invited me up to Brooks to teach for one of his classes, and actually he took my portrait. And what you're describing is exactly what you did. We hung out, we went for a walk, we had some lunch, the class happened, and somewhere in the middle of that, you picked up your camera. And one thing I noticed was you always had your camera with you, and even that was. And it sounds crazy given that we're photographers, but even that felt a little bit odd. Like a lot of my professional friends, especially they don't really pick up their camera unless they're getting paid for it. And I was feeling guilty of that as I was watching you. And since then, it's funny. I actually went out and you inspired this. I went out and bought one of those spider belts just because I don't like holding things in my hands. And my friends make fun of me now because I have my camera with me a lot more, and it's been very very rich in that regard.
Two things on that one.
Yeah.
The one, having you as a guest speaker, that was insane. That was unbelievable. Life changing for some students. So that was great. And then the other thing was with the camera. I have this thing sitting on my desk, which I got recently. I have to show you guys. Check this out. It's this giant light bulb. Did you see it? But of course, right? $10. Love those things. But
that's sick. That's great.
Why I wanted to bring it out is earlier I remember as a kid in high school, my brother and I had this Jeep. And I started driving the Jeep, and all of a sudden I saw these other guys driving Jeeps, and you'd wave to them and stuff. And they were always there, it's just I didn't see them until I was physically inside of one.
Yeah.
And artifacts, even like this light bulb, even though it's cliche, put a light, you have an idea.
Right.
Students come into my office to talk about ideas and just funny things, and physically holding this, having this object close, it changes the way I think, and I think the camera's like that too. Perhaps another example is that I use in class. I say if you go to a barbecue or a party and you have a water bottle or Coke in your hand, you see people and you see people you want to talk to. I want to go talk to Johnny or Dane or whatever. But then if someone took that water bottle out of your hand and put a water balloon in your hand, all of a sudden you see different people. It's the same group, but you're noticing different things. I would say the same thing even with a camera or a certain type of camera or lens. Like if I have a wide-angle lens on and at that party, I'm like, how can I pull back and get a nice wide-angle open shot? But if I have a 50 and the fisherman walks by, I'm like, oh, I'm after that guy wanting the character portrait.
Sure.
But for me, the physicality of stuff, even non-photographic stuff, is really important to being an artist. Whether that's having a little thing of paint set next to your desk, or I have some drumsticks. So when I'm doing Photoshop, every once in a while, I'm just like kind of get away from the computer and just think differently, and then think about rhythm. Because for me, photography and composition, all that's a lot of it's rhythm or music or those things. I think are key beyond like snagging the right photo. It's that these things can kind of open up or ignite different artistic concepts or ideas in us, and that to me is really kind of exciting. That's why I like hanging out with other artists, I think, too.
Well, just because I know people will get mad if I don't ask, who's your favorite couple, celebrities, and why that you've had a chance to photograph?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I think I think of that. Part of the trick for me with photography is I was borrowing a student's 4x5 camera a few years ago because I'd never shot with one.
And I was like, I just don't know what to shoot. And he's like, dude, just shoot things that interest you, that people that fascinate you. And I was like, ah. And that started off this whole interesting project. And so anyway, for me, the reason I photograph certain people is in a kind of learn from them or be mentored from them without them knowing it. But while we're shooting, I'm kind of asking them questions about life or success or art or whatever it is. And I'm interested in people who, this is a long answer to a short question, but
no,
I'm interested in people who've been really successful and then maybe aren't. Like they won the world title, but then it's 10 years later. Some people fall apart. Some people excel in whole new ways.
Yeah.
So anyway, for me, it's those little kind of insights from the people that I've gotten, and I'm trying to think of a good one.
Well, let me just interject as you're thinking about it. One of the things that's striking me about everything you're saying is how it undermines celebrity entirely, because it sounds like you keep getting back to, so Tom Curran or Rob Mikado or like, but then there's Rob, and then there's Tom, and whatever they're, and I remember when we were together, you were telling me about Kelly's eyes, and like they're, and what you saw in them, and like they're, to me that is the big humanizing element that ultimately I think everyone, whether they know it or not, they want to celebrate that.
Right.
Not the knownness of a person, because then it can become so thin and trite and it misses what it could be, it seems to me.
I totally agree, and the part of it, I think one of the amazing things about photography is that, especially people photography, and again, I would say this of any genre, is that you get to spend time with these people who are what it's like to be a kid, and you're like, oh man, I need to do this more, and just the way kids move, or like the smart lad that I am, I said, your eye patch is made out of wetsuit material. Why is that? And he said, well, how else would I keep my eye socket warm when I'm surfing? And I was like, oh, of course, right.
Anyway, hey, Chris, let me interrupt. It was a little choppy there, just for the last 20 seconds. Can you repeat that last part again that led up to the whole eyeball thing? Because we missed it, and I want to hear it again. So say it.
So photographing Jack O'Neill, he's in his 70s.
Oh yeah, the O'Neill guy.
Beard, he looks like a pirate, or like this guy's been on a ship for the last 50 years or something, and he has an eye patch made out of wetsuit material. And I asked him what it was made out of, or why it was made out of that, and he said, of course, to keep his eye socket warm when he's in the ocean, which, was like, duh.
Yeah.
The guy who invents the wetsuit, probably, But with him, though, with someone who's, like, lived a long life, there's so much wisdom to gain from someone like that, just the way they lived or haven't lived. Sometimes with certain people, I photographed some people who were great from a distance, and then I got to know them through the shoot, and I was just disappointed, and that's motivating to me as well. Like, I have a friend who became an architect because an ugly building was built really near his home in his hometown. It made him so mad that he went out, he studied architecture, and he did amazing work. So for me, it is all those experiences, of these different people, different walks of life, and sometimes it makes me, say with like the sound kind of funny, but with some people who are, say like the celebrity surfer, there's a lot of kind of drifting in that kind of lifestyle, meaning a lot of travel. They're kind of their home is everywhere, but really nowhere.
Yeah.
And seeing those guys, even just like, man, you have a great family, love what you get to do, and cool job, and so they almost turn the tables on you, because I'm thinking, oh man, this guy's living the life, the dream, but then I realized, oh, okay, there's so much to be grateful for, and that happens in lots of different ways. And then other times it makes me realize, like, or I'll shoot someone and I'll realize, gosh, I made a mistake, in that situation too. So it's not just all positive stuff. There's things that, for me, photography requires you to confront who you are. I don't have a good story that wouldn't be too overly revealing or something, but there's things where I've like realized I made a major mistake, and the camera helped me discover that. And I'm grateful for that. But for me, it's that mix, right?
Powerful, man. Well, I want to just thank you again, Chris, for being on the show today. And privately, just thanks for being my friend. I really enjoy our conversations and look forward to plenty more. If you're at home and you want to find out again more, Chris, go to lynda.com. At least watch the little snippets that are for free. You're going to sign up for it anyways, but my encouragement is the sooner the better. If you want to learn anything from Photoshop to whatever that can be digitized, that's the place to go do it. And then the other opportunity too is if you ever get a chance to hear Chris speak or lecture, or if you have a chance to be up near Brooks, go say hi. If you see him at a conference somewhere, it's just a privilege. And again, I can't thank you enough for being on the show today. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And my other little plug would be I have a couple of TEDx talks, which would be fun. You kind of
of course. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So just go to TED.com and look up Chris Orwig?
Yeah, or even if you just Google my name, Chris Orwig, and TEDx, you can find some of those things. That could be a fun way just to kind of see a little bit more. And I would say back at you, Dane, literally having you come out to Santa Barbara and connect, the way I think you do, especially, how you approach things from this really authentic perspective and cut through a lot of the mess of the industry, cut right to the important stuff, and get people thinking and moving, and even conversations like this. I mean, this is great. It'd be great to do this once a week, and I think that's, for me, I'm sure you agree with this. It's kind of what makes all of this so amazing, right? Is it's very dimensional in who we are, who we're becoming professionally, personally, and creatively, and all that stuff. So I'm a huge honor to be here, and I'm stoked to be friends as well, and look forward to hanging again. So
awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you. Well, at Chris Orwig on the Twitter, I think, and chrisorwig.com, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon, my friend.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.